Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here. Always nice talking about one of my favorite characters in Honkai Star Rail. Is Kafka still worth it in version 1.6? I'll give you a TLDR. If you are a new player looking for efficiency in your account, looking for a nice different playstyle than traditional crit damage, and cheap to build, free to play options available, probably Kafka is definitely still worth it. But if you are looking for maybe a DPS to carry your account like a Jingliu who fits into very well in the current meta, probably Kafka does fall a little bit behind. I think that is my honest biased opinion in version 1.6. Jingliu is just super favored right now in the meta, and to some extent even characters like Imbibitor Lune, including characters like Blade, these are definitely much more traditional DPSs that a lot of people might find value in, and it's much easier to play. But of course, I'm not sleeping on Kafka either. I think she's a really strong character. Cheap to build, easy to build, great for free-to-play players. But here, let me just tell you some things that I think make her better in 1.6 than she was even before in 1.2. And if any of you are planning on skipping Kafka, maybe you didn't get her the first time, let me just tell you one thing. The first rerun is known because it's probably going to be like 6 months from the time that they're released, but the second rerun is a huge question mark. If you miss her this time, God knows when she's coming out the next time. We'll talk about it as well. And I'll even talk about some Eidolons, whether it's worth it to get S1, E1 and stuff like that towards the end of the video for any of you whales looking to get more of this particular character. But first things first, do I think she's better in 1.6? Yes, I do think so. I think she's still very good, very attractive, and would likely even getting better according to some dreams that we are seeing also. First things first, let's talk about relics. Previously in 1.2 and before, we didn't have these two specialist sets, the Firmament Frontline Glamour as well as the Prisoner in Deep Confinement. These two sets are so good for Kafka, and let me explain why. DOT characters, first of all, in case any of you don't know, and we have a full guide on DOT, so if any of you are interested in what makes DOT better, like does defense threat work on DOT, does damage buff, elemental bonus, what affects DOT, check that video out. But I'll give you like a quick snippet of what's important so that we can continue watching the video. DOT characters don't crit, which means like this crit damage that I have here is absolutely wasted because the instances of damage over time doesn't have critical damage. And other than that, attack percentage is what they really skill off with. As we can see, is pretty much like written in their thing here. The procs based on original damage here. You have lightning damage based on attack percentage. You have shock that is based on attack percentage over here, you can see. So most of them, all of them in fact skill off with attack percentage. The only exception of DOT that doesn't skill off with attack percentage is probably this one here, your Trend of Universal Market, a light cone that is for preservation characters. The Burn DOT here scales off with defense, but this is the only exception and it's not a character, so I won't elaborate too much on that. So relics, very strong. You get 12% attack, 12% attack in the 2-piece, 24% straight up with the 2-piece here and 2-piece here for the Prisoners of Deep Confinement and 2-piece for Firmament Frontline Glamour. 4-piece of Prisoner in Deep Confinement is where it gets even better. This 18% defense shred, 6% defense shred ignore for every stack of DOT goes up to 3 DOT stacks, so 6% times 3, 18% defense ignore for Prisoner in Deep Confinement. Defense shred is actually really valuable. Not only does it work with DOT's damage increases with when you defense shred an enemy, but some people were actually running Jingliu, for example, with the Quantum set, the Quantum 4-piece set that has defense ignore in it. For any of you who don't remember, it's the Genius of Brilliant Stars. The 4-piece effect actually tells you that you have 10% defense ignore, and on top of that, if they have a quantum weakness, additional 10% ignore defense of total of 20% if you are fighting a quantum enemy. People would neglect the ice set to go for it, and that shows how rare and how useful defense threat is. Of course, there are other sources of defense threat in the game. For example, you have light cones like Resolution Shines of Pearls of Sweat, which gives you 16% at S5, 12% at S1, Resolution Shines of Pearls of Sweat defense decrease. You have characters, for example, like Silverwolf, who shreds defense. You have characters like Pella, who shreds defense in an AoE, but still not very easy to find, and that's why coming in a relic, 4-piece Prisoner in Deep Confinement, very valuable. And that is why I think it got a lot better. DOT characters got a lot better in 1.6, allowing you to run more offensive light cones, allowing you to run more offensive teammates like Esther, Ron May, for example, in the Harmony slot, rather than focusing on the defense shredded above your damage. Next up, Firmament Frontline Glamour. The 2-piece, of course, we will talk about it. First part gives attack percentage, but what makes it even better is the second part. When you have 135 or 160 speed or higher, you actually get 12% and 18% more damage respectively. Damage percentage bonuses affect DOT too, which is why it's very good on characters like Kafka. Some of you will be like, 160 speed is actually not easy to get. It's actually quite expensive. For the whales, if you have a S1, you get this stacking speed increase from her patience is all you need signature light cone. I guess that's how the Hoyoverse try to sell us signature light cones, because if you have this signature S1 patience is all you need, you will easily hit that 160 mark for Kafka, allowing you to get the full damage bonus more or less 100% of the time from the relic sets. But for those of us who don't have that much money, you don't have S1 included, you have so many other characters to build. I feel you, I understand. You can firstly build her for speed as I have. 147 speed is my current Kafka build. Otherwise, a very cheap way is just slotting in Esther in a third slot in a team. This was a solution all the while we had in like 1.0. But Esther's ultimate here, as you can see at level 10 for Astral Blessing, her ultimate ability, straight away just pumps like 50 speed into Kafka. If you have Kafka naked, no speed at all you need really is I think like 9 speed. Her base speed is I think is like 101. 100. So you just need to find like 10 speed from subs or something like that, and you straight away hit that 160 speed requirement as well from Esther. And Esther is also a very good comp, but we'll talk about team composition, how they've changed over time in a little bit. So that's the biggest change I find for relic sets, because previously, let's go into like the synthesis menu here. Kafka didn't have as much options back in like version 1.1 and before, 1.0 and before. Probably a lot of us might be running a combination of Messenger, Hacker Speed with Musketeer or Wildweed back then, attack percentage and speed. Or maybe some of us are running Thief of Shooting Meteor. But now with this huge change in Prisoner of Deep Confinement, Kafka is so much better. I have a build guide, updated build guide on Kafka as well, which is probably on the channel or coming out depending on when this video is released, or when you're watching this video. But Firmament Frontline Glamour, this is so good. Before that, we were probably running Fleet of Ageless to give a bit more sustain, 12% HP bump and 8% attack boost for the whole team. So you buff your other attack teammates, or Space Sealing Station if we wanted that 24% attack bonus. But with this Firmament Frontline Glamour, allows us to really focus in on the harder stats to get, like damage percentage, and the Prisoner in Deep Confinement 4-piece lets us have like defense shred, which is much harder to get at attack percentage, very easily obtainable attack percentage from supports like Esther, Harmony characters in general to give a lot of that. And Runmei even to some extent, if you use the right sets, she also gives quite a lot of damage bonus if you have even her E2 and stuff like that. But yeah, that is the first part, relics, and let's talk about the next part, which is light cones. Now, this one has been around for a while now, but I don't think it was released when Kafka was first released, if I'm not wrong. But of course, let's just breeze through it real quick. The Solitary Healing Light Cone is tremendously good. And not only because Kafka can use it, but its effects are so general. Solitary Healing, the Herta Light Cone that is appearing in the Herta shop when you complete Simulated Universe. This can be used for other DOT characters too, not just Kafka. It gives break effect, which generally characters in the DOT element do appreciate. It's another source of damage when you break enemy weaknesses. You have DOT increase for the wearer, tons of value here, and also a bit of energy refund. Everything DOT characters need. It's free, which means you can get it at S5. You have great stats from the HP attack line. You have here, as you can see, 529 attack, which DOT characters scales off tremendously well with. And that combines with the Fermata, which you can get for free in the Light Cone shop for the Simulated Universe. The Memory of Chaos Light Cone shop, the one that you can get from the Remembrance Lady. This gives you break effect too, 32%. Not as much attack, 476, but you get Wind Shear, Shock here, damage increase, which can be pretty much used for your Sampo, your Kafka, who knows, maybe your Black Swan can use it if she's DOT too. Very, very good value. And these are all free to play. Fermata is like total free to play. You have Solitary Healing, total free to play. Tons of value right there already. And if you have maybe more resources and stuff, you have Eyes of Prey, which is better for characters like Sampo, more DOT increase at S5. You have Resolution, Shines of Pearls of Sweat. It makes your Nihility characters, a class that's like super flexible, be even more flexible, because now you have defense shredding. You can help another character deal more DOT because of this DOT shredding, so you have flexibility there. You have Good Night Sleep Well here, that is also applies to DOT. You have this at S5, this becomes like what, 72% damage increase. That's ridiculously high, with a decent amount of attack, 4762. Very, very strong and super versatile as well. Can be used on other characters. So Light Cones, check. Relics, check. Very easy to farm as well, because if you're looking for substats for your characters, if you farm, for example, you're farming this domain, the Firmament Frontline Glamour, you don't even need crit subs. all you're looking for really is like the correct main stat. For example, once you have like lightning bonus, and once you have, for example, the many different builds that we'll talk about on our build guide video already, once you have like the main stats checked, and then everything else pretty much falls in line. You can do with a bit of speed, a bit of attack percentage, you can do with a bit of, for example, break effect, and that's it. Like maybe some sustain, crit rate, crit damage, none needed, which means your other hungry characters in the game, for example, your other team is like maybe a Jingliu team, a Imbibitor Lunae team, a Zealer team, a Blade team. These characters are so hungry for crit and crit damage that you don't want to be forced to build two teams that need your crit rate gear. If not, you'll be farming to the ends of the earth. Having some kind of flexibility here, I think is tremendously good. Having one team that specializes in DOT break, the other team that specializes in crit damage, quite good efficiency for any player, even if you're late game or new player too. So, relics check, light cones check. Let's talk about new characters, and there are so many new characters that are out and might be even coming out in future that will benefit this particular character, that makes her even better in 1.6 than before. Now let's jump into it. For this, I want to go actually in the teams menu because I think it's a lot easier to talk about when we can see the characters in line and lining up like soldiers here. So first, Kafka, first slot. So she's going to be your DOT character, and as a pure free-to-play, you have no money, you are just starting out the game, all you need to do is slap on an Esther here. She is free, everyone has her. I'll talk about her in a bit, but let me slap on the other free character that everyone has. Kafka, Esther, Natasha. These three characters together are so good, everyone has them. Esther gives you speed for Kafka, for Natasha, which means more actions for Kafka. Her follow-up attack is based on her turns, so you want to lap her quickly with more speed, so she does more damage. More energy means she acts more often, can pop more often too. Speed benefits the set bonuses that she gets because she needs to hit a threshold of 160 speed. Esther is very good for that. Esther provides a lot of attack bonuses, which DOT characters like, and she buffs. Esther buffs in an AoE, your whole team gets the buff, which DOT teams generally will move towards rather than like one hyper carry kind of team, which is why Esther is really nice. Esther also has a burn in her basic attack once you unlock some major traces, which is very, very nice. Very good for a lot of teams. So you have burn here, you have shock from Kafka. Your healer slot here, Natasha, is just flexible. For now, you can just run Natasha, but the last slot is where it gets interesting. If you don't have any luck with characters, you could always run, for example, a Sampo here, a Serval here while you are waiting for Sampo, for example. Maybe you can just run Serval in the meantime while you're waiting for a better DOT, AoE DOT character. Playing like Serval because she's free, I think. I think Serval is free for everyone. And then once you get, for example, Sampo, you can swap her out for a character like Sampo. So now you have Wind Shear, you have Burn, you have Lightning Damage. This was pretty much a template all the way, but now as we progress deeper into the game, we have so much more options. First of all, Esther, now you can choose to switch. If you don't want your Burn coming from here, and you're confident maybe you don't really need a speed, you have good gear, you have attack bonuses already from your healer. For example, maybe let's just talk about the first one that changed is Huo here. Let's say now you have attack percentage coming from your sustain character. Previously, Natasha in this team didn't really offer too much. Other characters maybe don't offer too much. But Huo here gives energy, and she already gives a lot of attack percentage, which allows you to switch out of Esther actually, because now you don't really need as much attack percentage coming from her. Don't really need as much speed because you have energy funneling from Huo. And if you're later into the game, maybe you have more better gear with speed subs, you can replace that as well. Which means Esther can be swapped for a more damaging option, for example like Huynh. So you have a bit more DPS here coming from a damage increase when she of course procs fire damage, it does more damage too. Triple damage dealer with one sustain, solo sustain. This is like one thing that changed. Another thing, of course, if you don't really want to run, for example, Huynh, you can stick to a harmony character like Runmei too. So instead of going more DOT aspect, now you are able to be a bit more flexible. You can go into, for example, a bit more break effect kind of builds with Runmei, which pairs very nicely with DOT characters as well, because you can explore break effect with all the light cones that all buff break effect for both of the free-to-play for Mata, your solitary healing, they both can play into that. Very, very nice. And because Runmei doesn't buff crit rate, crit damage, she buffs damage bonuses, she helps res pen the enemy in terms of resistances, making her a very solid pick as well to DOT teams too. So this is something that definitely changed just only in version 1.6.
For those of you who want more DOT, maybe Huo is not as exciting now because you're maybe going more for break effect, you could always switch for a character like Fucc and slapping on the Preservation Light Cone trend of Universal Market so that she's able to prop burn as well in a defensive role, preservation role. So you have DOT coming from Fucc, you have some sort of mitigation of damage. Crit rate that she buffs is not very useful for DOT, but still crit rate is better than crit damage because at least there's still absolute instances. They do not a lot, but a bit of damage increase, not totally useless. Another example of how you can go. There are so many healers nowadays. You can go for Luota, you can go for other characters like Bailu, you can go for Lynx, Natasha, Japad to some extent. So many options now in version 1.6, making her super flexible to run. Your sample here is probably, in my opinion, like one of the better options in 1.6, but in 2.0, if we get other characters that have Nihility-like ability that procs some sort of wind shear, sample could be replaced, or maybe you could even replace Runmei with another wind shear character in the game. I think there will be a lot of upside as well. So Kafka, very strong right now in version 1.6, will get better beyond. And let's talk about the last thing, which I think is the most subjective and why I think that this character will see longevity in future. One of the most important things is you need to have a trinity of things working for a particular character. First, they have to be good for everyone, pretty decent in the meta. Secondly, they need to have longevity in terms of not getting too power crap. So first thing we already talked about in all the videos so far, she's a character that's pretty easy to build, cheap to build, diversifies your resources, efficient, and has many characters in terms of playstyle. So that first box check. Longevity wise, she has a skill that can act as a supportive character that pops DOTs that are there. Right now in version 1.6, she's like a lot of the main damage dealer because we don't have any other 5-star DOT characters. But once we do, once that happens, she can easily switch to a backseat role, just like supporting the entire team with DOT, buffing and stuff like that, making her still have the ability to not only be main or sub DPS, but also supportive roles too. Very strong. Combined together the fact that she can do like follow-up attacks, plays into many different stuff on her own. Her signature light cone, if you eventually want to get it, also has additional DOT to proc, which means you can check a lot of the boxes like Good Night Sleep Well, your DOT stacks on the counter for your relic sets, for example like Prisoner in Deep Confinement. So you have scalability into the late game. You have Eidolons that are pretty decent as well, because for example, I think E2 is the one that's like super strong for, it transitions her into like a super support, while Kafka is on the field. DOT damage dealt by all allies increases by 25%. This scales on to like 1 year, 2 years later, she will still have some upside potential as well. So longevity, definitely check. And the third and last trinity of the triangle that I think is super important is the fact that she has support from both the community as well as developers. Characters, for example, like, I'm not wanting to name a few, but let's say Xingyuan, these characters tend to be popular but ignored by the developers. You can see how they're doing it. They are straying away from his kit and benefiting characters, for example like Kafka, who are also similarly very popular, but they are stacking up more DOT relics, they're stacking up more light cones, introducing new characters that are good with her, that work really well, also because credit to Kafka being quite flexible as well. But still, you have support from developers. They love this character, they know that she sells well, and they know the community love her, which is why they don't want to let us down. They want to keep improving this particular unit. And you see that similarly for characters like Jingliu, who the community loves, developers love, Ibai Lune to some extent, developers love, community love, and characters that are favored both by community and developers will continuously sell well, scale into the later game, and is why I think she will likely still have a place. And DOT teams are hardly touched now outside of Kafka mains, which is why I think there's a lot of potential here in the DOT space, which benefits her a lot. Good in 1.6, not going to be your flashiest DPS, but let me know in the comments below what you think about my thoughts. 2 videos I want you to check out. First is an updated Kafka build guide, because a lot of things changed. We talked about a bit here, but more in depth in this video. As well as the second thing I think that is very interesting, check out this DOT fundamentals guide. Everything you need to know, get started in DOT teams. If you're a Kafka main, definitely worth checking out. And thank you guys so much for your attention. See you next video.